हामी यो काठमाडौँ कलिङ लिटरेचर फेस्टिभलको पहिलो दिनमा छौँ र पहिलो दिनका सेसनहरू समानान्तर रूपले तीनवटा हलमा चलिरहेका छन्। हामी हल नम्बर 3 अर्थात् तेस्रो हलमा छौँ र अब यसपछि हाम्रो एउटा सेसन लगत्तै हामी सुरु गर्ने तयारी गरिरहेका छौँ। कृपया बाहिर हलभन्दा बाहिर रहनुभएका महानुभावहरू हलभित्र आइदिनका लागि म अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु र स्वयंसेवक साथीहरूले पनि उहाँहरूलाई सहजीकरण गरिदिनका लागि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। अझै हामीसँग धेरै सेसनहरू बाँकी नै छन् आजकै लागि पनि। भोलिको सेसनहरू त छँदै नै छ, आजका लागि पनि धेरै सेसनहरू बाँकी रहेको हुनाले हामी सकभर समयलाई पर नधकेलेर सुरु गरौँ भन्ने सोचिरहेका छौँ। अबको सेसन चाहिँ हाम्रो ब्रिजिङ ओल्ड्स द आर्ट अफ पब्लिसिङ एन्ड ट्रान्सलेसन भन्ने रहेको छ र यसमा प्यानलिस्टका रूपमा चाहिँ हाम्रो कनिष्का गुप्ता, राहुल सोनी, चिराग ठक्कर, अमिश राज मुल्मी र अभय के हुनुहुन्छ भने यसलाई चाहिँ प्रोफेसर जतिन्द्र कुमार नायकले चाहिँ मोडरेटर गर्नुहुनेछ। बाहिर रहनुभएका साथीहरूलाई हाम्रा पाहुनाहरूलाई हलभित्र आइदिनका लागि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु र स्वयंसेवक साथीहरूले सहजीकरण गरिदिनु होला। हामी अब लगत्तै यो सेसनलाई चाहिँ अगाडि बढाउनेछौँ। हाम्रा वक्ताहरू आउँदै हुनुहुन्छ र अर्को पनि सेसनमा रहनुभएको हुनाले अलिकति आउन समय लाग्नेछ। हामी यहाँ जति उपलब्ध हुन्छौँ यो सेसनलाई सुरु गर्दै गर्छौँ र बाँकी जोइन चाहिँ हामी पछाडि गर्नेछौँ। र अलिक पछाडि बस्नुभएका महानुभावहरू अगाडि आइदिनका लागि म अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। यो अलिकति निकै नै महत्त्वपूर्ण विषय छ। हामी कला साहित्य मार्फत चाहिँ कसरी विश्वलाई जोडिरहेका छौँ, हाम्रो साहित्य मार्फत भन्ने कुरा हाम्रा अनुवादको पाटोबाट हुन सक्ला अथवा प्रकाशनको माध्यमबाट हुन सक्ला, कसरी हामी विश्वलाई एकअर्कासँग जोड्ने कोसिस गरिरहेका छौँ साहित्यका माध्यमबाट भन्ने विषयमा महत्त्वपूर्ण छलफल हुन गइरहेको छ। र यो छलफलको सहजीकरण प्रोफेसर जतिन्द्र कुमार नायकले गर्नुहुनेछ र यसमा वक्ताका रूपमा चाहिँ कनिष्का गुप्ता, राहुल सोनी, चिराग ठक्कर, अमिश राज मुल्मी र अभय के रहनुहुनेछ। हामी केही वक्ता र हाम्रो सहजकर्ता उपस्थित भइसक्नु भएको छ, त्यसकारण उहाँहरूलाई स्वागत गरिदिनका लागि म साथीहरूलाई हार्दिक अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। उहाँ पनि आइसक्नु भएको छ, चिराग सर, उहाँलाई पनि हर्टली वेलकम। अब हामी जतिजना छौँ सुरु गर्दै गरौँ। साथीहरू आउँदै गर्नुहुन्छ। साथीहरू स्वयंसेवक साथीहरूलाई चाहिँ म उहाँहरूलाई स्वागत गरिदिनका लागि अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। त्यसपछि हामी लगत्तै सुरु गर्नेछौँ। हाम्रो यो निर्धारित गरेको समय चाहिँ 4 बजे सुरु गरेर 4:45 सक्ने भन्ने थियो। हामी अलिकति ढिला भएका छौँ, त्यसकारण त्यो कुरालाई पनि मध्यनजर गर्दै समयलाई मध्यनजर गरिकन यो 4:45 को सकभर ननाग्ने गरिकन यो चाहिँ सेसन सम्पन्न हुनेछ भन्ने विश्वाससहित म आदरणीय प्रोफेसर जतिन्द्र कुमार नायकजीलाई हार्दिक अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु सेसन अगाडि बढाइदिनु लागि।
Thank you. I very warmly welcome you to this session focusing on public publishing, the art of publishing and translation. We have a very distinguished panel with us, very experienced editors and literary agents and publishers. So I'm sure the discussion will be very lively. So I'll just, since we are hard pressed for time, I'll just make a few very general comments and then ask our panelists to discuss this very important subject. The printed book is hardly 500 or 600 years old. In India, it's hardly 200 odd years old. But we're already talking, already experiencing a kind of anticipatory nostalgia. Everybody's saying that, well, the days of the printed book are over and we're moving very fast into the digital world, and books as we know them, books as material, physical objects, will very soon be replaced by Kindles or digital versions. But I think from whatever we can see around us, the books are quite resilient as material objects. They are with us, and I hope they will be with us for a very long time. And we know very little about, since I'm a teacher of English literature, as a teacher of literature, we have actually failed to do our duty by this publishing and editing world, because whenever we talk about literature, we always talk about the writer, the author, and the reader or the critic. We always miss out, we always forget the very vital role played by publishers who bring the manuscript into being as a printed book. So we tend to neglect the processes involved in forming the book as a physical object, which is so central to civilization as we know it. At least the modern world is very much an outcome or product of our encounter with, our interaction with the printed book. When, for instance, in my state, Odisha, when printing technology arrived, people treated with his suspicion, which led to fascination. In the beginning, no one would touch a printed book because they thought they would lose caste, because they thought missionaries were spreading Christianity, they're disseminating Christianity through the printed book. But very soon that suspicion gave way to fascination. So Pandits would bring palm leaf manuscripts. The printing machine was treated as a magical object, and they would put the palm leaf manuscripts on the printing machine and think that now it will be magically transformed into a printed book. So this is the transition from suspicion, fear, and then to fascination. But still we don't know much about, at least in the universities. I don't think many universities offer courses on publishing and editing. If I ask a student, what's the job of a literary agent? I don't think I'll get an answer. Or what's the role of a development editor, a commissioning editor, or a copy editor? I'll draw a blank. So we know very little about, at least in the universities, except Jadavpur University and Kolkata University, know where publishing and editing. I may be wrong. I may be corrected, but I don't think any university offers courses on book history, publishing, and editing. So it's extremely important that we discuss the art, publishing as an art, the art of publishing, and the challenges of publishing translation, because that's another area that we must pay attention to. In 2015, I think Arunav Sinha wrote an article saying, when will good days for publishing translations come in India? And he said that, well, if somebody gets a Nobel Prize from regional languages, maybe. But in the meantime, Gitanjali Sri has at least got Man Booker Award, and Vinod Shukla has got a very prestigious award. So let's hope the future of translation has grown a little bit brighter. So having made these very banal and general observations, I would now request the panelists to make their observations and carry the discussion forward. Should we begin with?
I think, when I was trying to get my first book published, I'm talking about 2002, there was very little awareness about agents, publishers. In fact, there were only 2 or 3 mainstream publishing houses. There was HarperCollins, Penguin, and Rupa. the subsidiaries of other multinational publishing houses like Salmon and Schuster, Pan Macmillan, Hachette, they had not, entered the Indian market, and there were just one or two agents, many of whom treated agenting as a side business. So it was not, full time, a dedicated vocation for them. But I think over the years, with the entry of major publishing houses, now we have at least 6 or 7 MNCs in India, and there was a British agency, Aitken Alexander, that set up an India office because they saw some opportunity. They saw the potential of making serious money from agenting. And then obviously Anuj Bhari from Red Ink Literary Agency, he sold the rights to Immortals of Melua for a very big 7-figure sum. So, and also like agenting has been written about many times. I have written a lot about agenting. I even interviewed rival agents because I felt that we were, as a community, as an agenting community, wasting a lot of time explaining to authors what we do. That's not our job. You don't, reach out to a doctor or a, psychologist saying that, what do? You reach out because you know that they are going to find a solution to your problem. So I think now there's a lot of awareness. There are many other agents. The problem with publishing right now is not, that print is going to decline, or, ebooks and audiobooks will take over. COVID proved that wrong. That's COVID. During COVID, there was a time when nobody had access to print books because bookshops were shut, and Amazon and other online retailers were not allowed to sell books because books don't come under, according to the Indian government, books are not essential items. So everybody has had access to ebooks and audiobooks, but the sales never shot through the roof. So ebooks are here to stay. The problem is that despite all the buzz around books, literature, new writers, new awards, translations, the sales are stagnant. They are not dropping. The print runs now in publishing, whether it's literary fiction or if it's translation, they're the same that they used to be years ago. So I think that the problem is that it's not growing. We are not being able to find new readership. A lot of readers are influenced by Instagram influencers who are just putting out books based on the content they're generating. So I think there's a paucity of serious readers.
Thank you, Kanishka. And would you like to reflect on these questions?
Yeah, is this working? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I can only speak for the Indian publishing scene, and like Kanishka was saying, it's not been a growing market, although print remains king, I guess. I'd say about 95% of sales still happen in print. Digital media have not caught on. The Kindles not caught on. Ebooks have not caught on. Audiobooks are still an emerging thing, and it remains to be seen what happens there. And again, not just Indian, but English publishing in India is what my experience is, and literary publishing in English in India, to be even more precise. I think everyone can come up, maybe, if it's there's enough space. Is this better? Oh yes, I can hear myself now. Right. So, like I was saying, making my role and my space of knowledge clear and giving you context about what I will be saying, I guess, is, so my experience is with publishing in India, literary publishing in India in English. We've narrowed it down very, very considerably. Publishing in India as such is a huge enterprise. It's a huge industry, but unlike any other place unlike any developed country in the world, it's dominated by education, and what we call trade publishing, which is where your general non-fiction, where literary fiction, where your novels, your best-selling Chetan Bhagats and Amish Tripathis and all of that, they fit. That makes up very tiny, a 5% or a 6% space, and that's not been growing. And part of it, I guess, comes from the fact that in the subcontinent, in India, definitely, English is a language still of such privilege. To have literary competence in English means that the writer and the readers, therefore, also are pretty much all of them in the 1%, economically speaking. And that is why I think translations, to come to our theme, become important, because we get to read stories from outside this very rarefied, very privileged space.
Thank you. I guess some amount of the commerce of publishing translation has been spoken about. So, but briefly and philosophically and fundamentally, translations are impossible. It is impossible to translate, but it is necessary, to borrow from Spivak. And I think what translations allow us a portal into someone else's lived experience. Publishing translations, buying translations, reading translations, saying yes to translations that land up in our inboxes, platforming translations. I think they speak to our ability to empathize with the other, empathize with lives that we have not lived, in languages we are not native, that are not native to us, or languages that have not been taught to us. And fundamentally, they speak to our ability to empathize with someone else's experiences in someone else's shoes, with all that is wrong about us as a species, with all the ongoing wars and what's happening, the genocide in Gaza, and all kin sort of turning on kin and people trying to get you. We're also fundamentally deeply capable of empathy and compassion, and our ability to universalize and listen to someone else's story. So translation allow us that portal, and publishing translations and buying translations, therefore, is helping, is in a sense a gesture to then try and see what someone else's lived experience looks like. But commercially, it's not one of those fast moving flying objects from shelves. Translations, a percentage of the translations that get published in the Indian languages tend to do commercially well. So a lot of the books that do sell in the Indian subcontinent, in the Indian sort of region, and in the Indian publishing context tend to be books of in the self-help segment, in the memoir segment, popular history, popular psychology, and things like that. So largely, the subcontinent tends to be a very utilitarian reading public that wants to become better versions of themselves by the time they have not even finished reading the book. People want to take capsule-sized lessons into their lives and take atomic habits and take investing tips and things like that. A lot of the successes, the commercial successes of these kinds of books actually help bankroll the commitment to publish translations for a bulk of publishing houses in India that choose to do translations in English. So that's the kind of offsetting logic that works behind the scenes.
All right. So I think there's quite a bit that has come out from the, let's say, the Delhi's publishing scene of, let's say, English language publishing that you said. As an outsider who used to be involved and now I'm peripherally involved, I think one of the issues that Indian/MNC publishers miss operating out of Delhi is that they forget that there's a larger world outside of, let's say, Delhi, Bombay, the metros of India. I don't think publishers have invested enough in the distribution channels, let's say in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh. They've not invested enough in creating readership there. And we know that as publishers, we have worked on books that are outstanding from these regions, but they haven't been able to get the markets simply because the publishers' distribution channels themselves have not operated in the right manners. So I think that is one. But the second part of that is also recognizing that translations is only one level. Translations is also us in English language publishing trying to be, let's say, open to the idea of language, let's say regional language writing. Whereas I feel that first we have to understand that the diversity of South Asia, which is the languages, the linguistic diversity, unless we come from that linguistic diversity, we won't be able to understand why exactly do translations work or why exactly should a particular book be translated. For instance, Rahul, you're a translator. You know, let's say in particular books in Hindi, this should be translated, this perhaps not. So there is something called the universality of stories, universality of language, And I don't think, I mean, like I said, coming back to that earlier point, both of these points are connected in my mind. That A, publishers need to recognize that, all right, how do you get the books to newer markets? And B, to get the right editors, to get the right translators who can understand where the books are coming from and therefore edit / work on them, get them distributed accordingly. So, yeah.
There are very four points made brilliantly by our panelists, and they have given us food for thought. I'll just add something to that, saying that, well, in the metropolitan cities, when we talk about major publishers, you have an ecosystem. You have a system in place where you have copy editors, you have proofreaders, you have all kinds of editors. But in, say, small towns or in small places in different parts of India, actually you don't have publishers who have printers. You submit a manuscript to them and it's published. It's printed. And all these intervening steps, all these, they're completely ignored. So we have now a landscape of vanity publishing. You have money, you write a book, you have a manuscript, and you immediately give it to someone, pay him, and it's printed. It's not published. So that actually floods the market. In fact, nobody buys them. That's the problem. So we have to address that problem. How to create a culture in which the younger generation would begin respecting the need for, or realizing the need for editing, need for preparing a manuscript for publication. That's why I said that in universities, we have very little idea about what is involved in publishing or bringing out a publishable book. We just think that something that is printed is a book. So we have to change that mindset, and it's a very tough task. I don't say that it's easy. So I remember Nabin Kishore, talking to Seagull, once talked about how he went on getting plays translated from different regional languages. That brings us to regional languages. And then it took him 30 years. And they were just becoming very, very depressed that over 30 years, all these translated plays, edited and prepared properly, do not find a market. Then suddenly things changed. They started being taught in different universities. People started learning from the plays written in other languages but translated into a linked language like English or Hindi. So the situation is not entirely bleak, but it's not very bright either. So I would like you to suggest ways in which we can improve the situation, even marginally. We can, yeah.
I think your views on publishing and are a little dated. I'll tell you why. Because I keep getting queries from young writers from smaller towns like the Northeast and like smaller towns in central India. So everybody, if they do Google publishers, agents, editors, they will have access to them. It's just that they're in a tearing hurry to publish. and they don't even know how to summarize their book into a synopsis, into a summary. They don't know how to write author bios, but even that can be done if you see all the tools that are available at your disposal. A lot of the liberal arts universities, they may not be having publishing courses, but they have visiting faculty, like for instance Ashoka has a publishing semester, I think course. I think it's done by Arpita, and then we have Siegel School of Editing, and then there are other courses which are happening. So I don't think that there is that problem of access to editors, agents. So that's my.
I think one thing that the industry perhaps feels, and our linguistic communities feel orphaned by, is the absolute disinterest from the state. The state does not, the capital S state, does not care about enough about keeping languages alive, doing enough about keeping our many, many multilingual traditions alive. For instance, Kanishka talked about books not being deemed as essential commodity during the many lockdowns India saw, for instance, during the pandemic. And you take the example of France, for instance, that not only deemed books as essential goods and services to be delivered to people, but they also significantly support the entire ecology of distributors, booksellers, and publishers. Perhaps the state needs to work closely with this ecosystem, this ecology of publishing, and publishers from various sort of India's states and languages, in order to ensure that there is a greater output of translations, a great set of translators are encouraged and mentored and coached to become translators, get subsidy in order to sort of take a break from careers that they may have, day jobs that they may have, pursue the core role and the loneliness it must mean to be a translator, to be a vessel for someone else's story, and then to transcreate that into whatever language that you're translating to. So I think state support is what I would emphasize on, apart from what's been said.
3 minutes.
You thrown me off guard. No, I think I agree. Yes, the state, yes, and there are more writers and all that now. But I think one of the most, see, structurally, I think it depends on how, as a society, we look at books. I think South Asia, like, what exactly does a book mean in South Asia, right? My experience, at least, and this is very, very subjective, tells me that a lot of people pick up books to learn something from them. I think the idea of learning is very, very integral to the idea of a book here. And that itself perhaps needs to change, because sometimes you don't want to learn from a book. Sometimes you just want to read it for pleasure. You want to read it for entertainment. And I think that idea that books can be entertaining, that imagination is fun, that, when, let's say, if kids are writing stories in school instead of doing math homework, then the parents are beating them up. So unless you change that, how are you going to change the idea of, let's say, more reading, more translations? Everything comes down to that, I think.
Well, I think it's
Take a minute and wind the discussion up. I think that was a very important point which Chirag made, the role of the state. And the state happens to be one of the largest or biggest publishers in India. For instance, Sahitya Academy publishes a book every 18 hours, a National Book Trust, and they don't bother about editing. Most of the books they publish are so badly edited, particularly Sahitya Academy, that they're almost unreadable. So, no, we're not being critical. So the state should also realize the importance of producing reliable, or I think well-edited, properly edited and properly prepared books. Would you like to say something? Yeah. Yeah. So that's very good for editing.
Yeah, for translation.
Oh, no, but I think for editing, those books must be properly edited before they're sent to the readers. That's okay. I think thank you very much for your patience. I think he gave us 3 minutes. So any questions? Oh, 1 or 2 questions. No comments, please. Questions. Okay, please. You have a microphone? Oh, yeah, but maybe they're recording. Please pass.
So in Nepal and in India also there is this translation of drama, especially stage drama, are mostly translated from English play, and so I'm studying theater currently. So I found it little bit like in translation, the adaptation carried away the essence of play a lot. So how's this in India, and what's your thought on like having a proper good translation rather than an adaptation of a play?
Any question? Okay.
You know, in my experience, there seems to be a kind of dimming of the light in the world of translated plays. They don't tend to do well, at least in the English language. There was a golden era of publishing plays translated from many Indian languages into English, primarily championed by Oxford University Press, which has a 110-year legacy in India alone. And they did all your big, and these are like Ravi Dayal and Girish Karnal, all of these people who passed through life's various creative stages and roles. Some of them are actually have also been playwrights and actors and film directors themselves. So all your Tendulkars and all the big sort of giants who came slightly after the progressives, and there was a kind of renaissance in the theater world. My observation has been that people want to see plays more than they want to read plays, at least in the publishing world. So we try not to publish as many because they simply don't see as much enthusiasm from readers unless those texts became prescribed as university texts as part of, for instance, a course that you're studying or similar courses that are being taught. So, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of the texts that remain neglected or that didn't have a lot of enthusiasm suddenly became big sellers because they were prescribed as mandatory reading material, course material across various kinds of humanities and social sciences degrees and courses. So right now plays are not doing too well, I'm afraid. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Yeah.
Thank you, Orion. I would like to request 1 minute. You are all holding stage from token of love. राज शाह आदरणीय दाइलाई चाहिँ म यो मायाको चिनो प्रदान गरिदिनका लागि हार्दिक अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु र यहाँहरू सबैलाई यो महत्त्वपूर्ण सेसनमा सहभागी भइदिनु भएकोमा धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। उपस्थित दर्शक दीर्घाम रहेर यो सेसनलाई सुनिदिनु हुने सबैलाई धेरै धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु र अबको यसपछिको हाम्रो सेसन चाहिँ अहिले नेपाली साहित्य को चाहिँ अनुवाद विकासको वर्तमान अवस्थाका विषयमा, हाम्रो नेपाली साहित्यको अनुवाद कसरी भइरहेको छ, के छ यसको चाहिँ वर्तमान अवस्थाका विषयमा त्यो सेसन हुनेछ र वक्ताका रूपमा चाहिँ साहित्यकारहरू महेश पौड्याल, सगुना शाह र चन्द्र गुरुङ हुनुहुन्छ भने त्यसलाई चाहिँ सहजकर्ताको रूपमा गणेश खनेयाले भूमिका निभाउनु हुनेछ। उहाँहरू सबैजना यो हलमा आइसक्नु भएको छ। हामी लगत्तै त्यो सेसनलाई पनि सुरु गर्नेछौँ। नेम चेन्ज पराएको छ। यस, थ्याङ्क यू। हेभ अ सिट प्लिज। हामी त्यो चेन्ज गरेर दिनेछौँ, नाम फरक परेको भएर मात्रै हो, त्यहाँनिर अर्को साथीहरूले खोज्न सायद समय लगाउनु भयो होला। थ्याङ्क यू एभ्रिवान, सबैजनालाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद छ महत्त्वपूर्ण समयका लागि, महत्त्वपूर्ण संवादका लागि। अब म स्टेजमा गणेश खनियाज्यूलाई आमन्त्रण गर्न चाहन्छु, जसले अबको सत्रलाई सहजीकरण गर्नुहुनेछ।